Om Shri Gurubhyo Nam Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Vidyam Karavavagai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good evening. We will revisit the first stanza of Sadhana Panchakam and the 8 steps, 8 instructions in the first level that we saw until the last class. And we will examine the last 2 and we move on to the next stanza. Right. So, the first instruction is study the Vedas every day, what it practically means, and what we can infer from that for us. We have seen that. Second one, practice the karmas prescribed in the Vedas. Again, what it means, we have discussed. Then, whatever spiritual practices you do, the liberating spiritual practices, a religious life, live a religious life in the spirit of liberating spirituality. Whatever you practice, surrender the results to Ishvara or God. Here, God is understood as Ishvara, which is discussed in the Veda. The God as described and understood by the Vedic tradition. That is Ishvara. That is the reason I use the word Ishvara. Okay. Eneshasya vidiyatam apachitihi. May all your activities, including the spiritual activities, be an act of worship. This may them be done in the spirit of worship, and the results be offered to the Supreme Being, God Ishvara. Then give up doing spiritual practices for the sake of getting things done, propelled by desires. And then we had this materialistic spirituality. We had a very comprehensive way of understanding that also in relationship to feel good spirituality and doing something because I feel like it or because it gives me a high. So going behind experiences, so many things we discussed in the last class. Yes. So giving up kamya karma in our current context, for even for those who are not doing the Vaidika karma, on a broad context, we can understand it as giving up your various activities, especially spiritual activities that are propelled by the pleasure principle, comfort simply for the sake of comfort seeking or for satisfying your desires, praying for things to happen, and propelled by desires also means propelled by hatred, all that we discussed. And by living like this, focusing only on liberating spiritual practices and spiritualizing every aspect of your life by connecting it to the devotion to God that you develop through action, which is basically the Kriya Yoga of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. We have discussed in some other class long back. The Kriya Yoga of Patanjali Yoga Sutra is not the so-called branded Kriya Yoga, this Babaji and Co. Kriya Yoga. That is not what we are talking here. Tapaswadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhana. So this is all this comes and can be understood as Kriya Yoga. Okay. So while living like this, while living a yogic life in one shot, okay, while living a yogic life, which purifies your mind by reducing the effect of your sinful karma on your mind, that is freeing your mind from the effect of your bad karmas, which means not being affected by likes and dislikes, and also creating a certain inner harmony that resonates with the universal harmony, and living a virtuous life, thereby becoming free from sinful tendencies, etc., you develop a certain purity of mind, a certain objectivity, and with that, may you see the limitations in the various worldly enjoyments that you generally hanker after. Bhavasuke dosho anusandiyatam. Every day, in every situation, in every natural seeking of different kinds of time bound limited happiness, you see the very nature. You are aware of the very nature of the time bound effort based happiness that you obtain, the worldly happiness. It is not about going behind each and every experience and condemning it. It is not that. It is about in one shot, you see the fundamental problem in limited happiness. You see the fundamental limitation in happiness that is the result of effort and obtained in time that goes away in time. So that's what it's talking about here. There is in Mundaka Upanishad, there is a discussion about Nasti Akritakritena. There is a sentence, Nasti Akritakritena. The eternal is not, the uncaused is not obtained by action. That which is uncaused. What is eternal is uncaused. So, if you are, that is not obtained by effort. And whatever is obtained by effort is not lasting. So, because there is a fundamental limitation in worldly attainments, worldly, otherworldly, super worldly, including experiences, we had a very detailed discussion in the last class about this. Because of that, you are not interested in this entire, the whole category itself. Bhavasuke means bhava is also becoming. So, you are not interested in arriving at some point of experience that needs to be sustained and maintained with effort, and no matter what you do, which will be lost. So you see this fundamental defect in time bound happiness, right? So what you do, you get depressed? No, because you were at least having some fun in life, going behind this and that, having some dream of some happiness. Now this Shastra came in, the teacher has come and knocked off that also. Right? You don't have, you're at least you're going behind some kind of happiness. Now that is all gone. Now I have broken your castle in the air. Totally destroyed all hope. There is no hope. There is no hope for happiness in life. That's what this basically means. Bhavasuke dosho nusandiyatam basically means there is no lasting happiness in any life situation, no matter what is the situation in this world or in heaven or whatever loka you go or whatever experience you get, there is no hope for lasting happiness in anything that you will obtain in time. So this whole concept is gone. Why we dismissed this? Because we intuitively understand we don't want happiness to end. We don't want happiness to end. That is the most natural thing anybody has. Does anybody say, I am so bored that I have been continuously happy? I don't know, probably some existential nut might say that, but generally, naturally, nobody says that. Nobody has a problem when they are continuously happy. But when they are not happy for a little bit of time, they can't take it. They want to get out of it. In fact, the more a person is habituated to being comfortable and happy, the less tolerance they will have for discomfort or unhappiness or displeasure. Right? So we understand that when the moment there is a promise of eternal happiness, everybody's eyes becomes big. There are people who are ready to kill themselves and kill hundreds of others also Because if they do that, they will become martyr and they will have eternal happiness in heaven with 72 virgins. Right? Though though the whole concept is a lie, still it is able to convince somebody. No matter what you do, no matter how stupid you are, the hankering after eternal happiness is natural. You may be stupid, you may be scholar, you may be intelligent, right? Somebody is very guilty, full of guilt. Then you tap into that guilt, all the psychological fault lines, and then say, here is Mr. X who died for all your sins. So you believe that this guy died for me, then all your sins are taken care, all your sins are gone. You will get salvation, where you are eternally in heaven for good with God, where there will be none of these problems. And then there is a lot of description of heaven, and the road will be with gold, all kinds of things, depending on where you are selling heaven. If you sell heaven in Africa, you market heaven differently. If you sell heaven in India, you market it differently. If you sell heaven to Japanese, I don't know what you will market to them. So depending on where you are selling heaven, there is a protocol on how to sell your heaven tourism. There is this website where they have understood the various psychological characteristics of people from different areas of the world, and then they have training manual to train you how to convert those fellows. How to convert different. It's the website called Joshua Project. Go that they do this. So it's about how to market this heaven, this so-called salvation. We're tapping into your guilt. If you don't have any guilt, they will scrap you and then make you find some guilt, because that's the selling. Similarly, you have the other guy. So you have a lot of heaven. Then we have our own. In the Vedic tradition, also there is a lot of heaven promotion. If you do this yajna, you will attain the Indra Padavi. You will get the post of Lord Indra. You will become Lord Indra after death. Probably after the current Indra's time period is over, one fine morning you will become Indra, the head of all the gods. There is some yagas for that. Then you will, if you do all these karmas, you will be there, and then you will be there in Pitru Loka. Then if you look at this. Yesterday was a birthday of one very famous guru, saint, avatar, whatever. So I remember when I was studying there, when that man was alive, they used to market that he will come in a golden chariot. Okay, so he will come in a golden chariot and give darshan. They were telling whoever sees this darshan of this person, this avatar in the golden chariot, this is their last life. I remember they marketed like that. If you see this Bhagwan in golden chariot, you will get liberated. The same one on Vaikuntha Ekadashi. If you look at that Surga Vasal, there is one entrance, special door in a Vishnu temple that opens only on Vaikuntha Ekadashi. That is one holy day. If you look at that, you will enter Vaikuntha and be with Lord Vishnu and do bhajan for the rest of eternity. Like this you have, but there is one scope, one positive thing about in Hinduism, in Vedic religion. One positive thing is, after giving all the heaven promises, there is one line that spoils the party. It says, Kshine punye martye lokam vishanti. Once your punya prepaid card is over, you will come back to this world of mortality. Again, you have to start the whole game from square one, back to square one. Again, you have to do karma, blah, blah, and all that. You have to reach some heaven. Again, prepaid card, load your prepaid card, and then go to heaven. Prepaid card over, come down. Again, load your prepaid card. So finally, but because one goes through the ritualistic donkey life within the confines of dharma, the dharmic life is designed in such a way that one fine morning you will wake up to the error. One fine morning you will wake up to your stupidity. You say, what am I doing? Why am I constantly going behind some future promise of happiness? Is there nothing eternal? And then you will start questioning about the eternal, and you will develop the desire for the eternal. So that is what is cultivate the desire for the self knowledge. Because when you are living an informed spiritual life with the knowledge of the Vedic literature, directly or indirectly, you happen to hear time to time about the eternal, the supreme, the uncaused, the absolute reality that always is there in all the three periods of that is in the past, that is in the present, that will be in the future. Something that always is, something that is infinite, something that does not require anything else for its own existence, something that is self existent, it's full of knowledge of the nature of knowledge, and is infinite, limitless. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. You have heard about that. And the one who knows that will cross the ocean of sorrow. The one who knows that will go beyond all limitation and attain the highest. So there is a kind of an indirect pointer, and then there are direct pointers. You are that. You are that supreme being. Atma is Brahman. Or like that, we have this kind of a pointer to the possibility of eternal happiness through self discovery, discovery of one's own true self. They say there is, you think you are not what you think you are. In reality, you are something else. You are actually that. First, they say there is the supreme being, and then they say you are that supreme being. You are not what you think you are. Now, there is an entire process by which you can understand this and abide in this knowledge and free yourself from all sense of limitation, and you will realize the eternal, limitless nature of yourself, which is eternal happiness. So, because of this indirect knowledge, you develop the desire for this eternal happiness, having given up hankering or going behind the limited happiness experiences. You start desiring eternal happiness, and you are informed that eternal happiness is not, because being eternal, it is uncaused, and so it cannot be the result of action. It has to be discovered in knowledge. So you go behind what is it, and then when you know that the eternal is basically your own self, you are the eternal truth, then you seek to know the truth. What is the truth about your true self? No, what is the truth about yourself? What is your true self? Cultivating the desire for atma. Atma means the self, right? Now atma is a word that comes in so many meanings, in so many contexts. Sometimes atma is used as the functional self, like Uddharet Atmanatmanam. There is a line in Bhagavad Gita. It says, uplift yourself by yourself. What does it mean? It means uplift the using your buddhi, uplift your functional self, uplift your mind, the quality of mind using buddhi. Yeah, that is the mean. Right? But when it comes to Brahman, Atma, self-realization, moksha, what they mean by Atma is the supreme self, not the functional self, the supreme self, which is Brahman. So develop the desire, cultivate the desire to know the Supreme Self as the only worthy pursuit. So once this desire is mature, comes the last instruction: give up all your societal bonds. In the sense, Nijagrihat Turunam Vinirgamyatam. Quickly, immediately run away from your real home. That is the meaning, literal meaning. Now, implied meaning is, so we have to analyze that. I said we will discuss that today. And then we will introduce the next step in the process, which is the second verse of Sadhana Panchakam. So we will listen to the two shlokas first. And now I will come to that last point: run away from your home. Having cultivated the self knowledge, run away from home. What does it mean? And after running away from home, what to do? That is going to be the main topic of today's discussion. वेदो नित्यमधीयतां तदुदितं कर्मस्वनुष्ठीयताम् येनैषस्य विधीयताम् अपचितिः काम्ये मतिस्त्यज्यताम् पापौघः परिधूयतां भवसुखे दोषोऽनुसन्धीयताम् Atmechha vyavasiyatam jagrihat turnam vinirgamyatam. This is the first sloka. Second sloka. Sangah satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridhadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridhataram karmashu santyajyatam सद्विद्वानुपसर्प्यतां प्रतिदिनं तत्पादुका सेव्यतां ब्रह्मैकाक्षरमर्थ्यतां श्रुतिशिरो वाक्यं समाकर्ण्यताम्. This is the second stanza. So, having run away from house, what you should do? Sangaha satsu vidhiyatam. You must seek the company of the people who are devoted to the truth. Satsanga, seek satsanga. Associate with people who understand or know the existence, those who have faith in the existence of Brahman. There is Brahman as the existential base for this experiential world that we have. This world, this life that we experience is based on a changeless absolute reality which is of the nature of existence, consciousness, and limitlessness. The one who believes in this, because Veda says so, or the one who has understood this or realized this. It is the company of the people who have who appreciate this truth and who are devoted to this truth. Satsanga means Satpurushasya Sangha. Here it is those Sangha of the people who are devoted to Sat, whose motive is to attain that Sat. Sat means existence, the truth, the absolute truth. What is this existence? Why they call it as existence? Because when we are experiencing something, for example, you go to the beach. In the beach, there is this wave rising, falling, rising, falling. Right? But if you really look, what is this wave? This wave, where is this wave coming from? The wave exists. The wave did not exist before. And as the wave arises, the wave exists. After that, the wave subsides, the wave is not there anymore. There is some other wave. Right? So the wave has a limited existence. But if you really inquire into the existential nature of the wave actually doesn't exist. The wave only appears. It is the ocean that exists. In the ocean, the wave appears. Then you go one step even deeper. Even the ocean is an appearance, the collective appearance in which there is this limited appearance of the wave. The appearance of the ocean endures the temporary, is more permanent than the temporary appearance of the wave, is more permanent than the appearance of the wave. The existence of the ocean is more permanent than the existence of the wave. The appearance of the ocean is more stable compared to the appearance of the wave. But in reality, ocean is also just an appearance. What is there is water. So the existential truth of the wave is water. The existential truth of the ocean is water. Understand? So the wave is dependent on water. The ocean is dependent on water, but the water is not dependent on any of the appearance. In this level, okay, don't go into water molecule and all that. Just for this example, without overstretching the example, just to understand the concept. Yeah. So existence means that which does not require something else for its existence. There cannot be a wave without water, but there can be water without wave. Clear? Another famous example is there cannot be a pot. You make a pot, you have to use clay or whatever, some material. So there cannot be a pot without clay. But even if you break the pot, there is still clay. There can be clay without pot, but there cannot be pot without clay, right? So pot is appearance, while clay is the existence in this example, right? So that which does not require anything else for its existence, but that from which all these experience, all appearances that we call life came out, that in which all this experience we have is sustained, and that into which this experience, this dualistic experience resolves back in the end, that is absolute existence. Where was it disrupted anywhere? Uh, I have some message in the chat. Can't hear. Okay. Now can you hear? Yes. Okay, good. I will continue. So I was talking about existence, absolute existence. Why faith is required is because if you don't know, the faith is required because logically you can speculate that there is no absolute consciousness as a base of all this. All this is just, it's just there and comes out of nothing, goes back into nothing. There are people who think like that. And this consciousness that we experience as the self, the consciousness which is the base of our experience of the self, is the result of matter being organized in a certain way, emergent property of matter. If you have some time, you do an internet search for the hard problem of consciousness. Okay, there is a lot of investigation and analysis and arguments into this question by the finest minds of the world, with a lot of with a lot of logical acumen and all that, with scientific evidence for against, right? So they are not able to come to a definitive conclusion. Like, for example, you come to a conclusion that earth is almost like a sphere. you know the planet earth is not flat, earth is round. It's a conclusion that you can very clearly come to. Like that, they are not able to come to a conclusion whether consciousness is fundamental or emergent. It's called the hard problem of consciousness. You can read about it. So one of the very big intriguing questions in the modern science and in the science of the future. And there are two camps who take the position that yes, consciousness is fundamental, and then they proceed from there. There is another camp which says no, consciousness is an emergent property of matter. There is no evidence, empirical evidence for consciousness being fundamental, and then they proceed from there. Okay. So that is why one needs to take the company of people who believe in the spiritual reality as the base for this phenomenal existence that we experience. Okay. So before we go into that more, the last step of the previous shloka: give up your home, run away from home. Nijagrihat turanam vinirgamyatam. Once you discover that the only meaningful pursuit is the pursuit of self-knowledge, everything else doesn't actually matter. This is the only true thing that matters. And you have cultivated the desire for it, which comes in the form of a certain existential restlessness of wanting to, be completely devoted to that pursuit, which says run away from home. This running away from home is a very historical thing. Why does it say like that? He could have said, it is being translated as, it is not actually running away from home. It is about, giving up your attachment to the home and various other social bonds that you have, so that, you are not constantly living for the sake of pleasing others and dragged by all kind of societal obligations, so that you are able to devote yourself completely to the pursuit of discovery of the self knowledge and all that. You don't really have to run away from home like this. We have a lot of explanations to this, and various versions of this meaning are given, interpretation are given for various kinds of people. So it is a dharma. Renunciation is a dharma. Okay, leaving house and going away basically points to renunciation. Renunciation here means giving up all those things that are not conducive or helpful for your pursuit of self knowledge. Whatever doesn't help your pursuit of self realization, you get rid of it. That could be one practical interpretation that can give now. But as we go more into it, before we go more into it, let us examine the history. Whoever wanted to find something permanent, if you take in the Hindu tradition, we have Yajnavalkya from the Upanishadic times in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The discussion, he says Yajnavalkya was a very rich rishi. He had a lot of cows and assets and all that. So he gives away his properties to his two wives, Maitreyi and Gargi, splits the properties and says, please take care of it. Now I need to go and devote myself to the uh, to being established in self-knowledge. So I am leaving everything and going to the forest. So I am giving away all the properties. Now you people are in charge. Take care, live happily, whatever. And then he wants to go. Then his wife asks, one wife is very happy with the money and all the cattle and everything. The other wife says, I am not interested in all this wealth. See, you are probably the smartest seer rishi in the country as we know. You are giving up all these nice things and going for something. You are not stupid. You are very smart. So, whatever you are going to seek, if that is not better than what you have right now, you would not go for that. So, what is it that you are going behind? I want that. I don't want this. Because this is useless. That's why you are giving it away. This doesn't serve you anymore. That's why you are giving it away. All these are going to go away at some point. You are going to seek something eternal, something. So, what is it that you are seeking? Teach me that. And she asks. Then the discussion goes in. The self knowledge is revealed by Yajnavalkya to Maitreyi to Gargi, right? So the Yajnavalkya to Maitreyi, I think, yes. So the discussion goes on. Self is the most loved of all things. That Atmanastu Kamaya Sarvam Prayam Bhavati. That huge discussion goes in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, very famous discussion. So Yajnavalkya wanted to leave Upanishads. Okay, another example. When the son wants to know the self, the teacher says, seek to know Brahman by tapasya, by austerity, and he goes away and meditates and contemplates. Then we have one person called Siddhartha Gautama. Gautama, no, the Siddhartha, the Gautama Buddha who became Buddha later. Now, this person is also a Hindu. Okay, so Buddhism came after him, but he is basically Hindu. So he wanted to find the solution for suffering. and he left his palace. He was a prince. Siddhartha left the palace and went away. Right. Christian mysticism. Saint Francis of Assisi. He leaves everything and goes away. He talks about absolute poverty, which is basically vairagya sannyasa. Samyak, you know, samyak nasa parityajyatam, giving up, total renunciation. That is what is meant by absolute poverty. Saint Francis of Assisi. Also, we see about various other mystics from every tradition. A shaman who wants to find the deeper truths of life leaves the tribe and goes away to the forest and comes back with its extra wisdom. So, in all the continents, at all periods of time, when somebody wanted to discover something that is deeper and lasting and more meaningful and more fundamental than this busy life, this phenomenal life that we are living, than what is familiar, they always go away and seek to find it. This is something that is very universal. It's a very universal thing that we find in across all cultures, across all times. So Nijagrihat Turanam Vinirgamyatam points to the absolute non-negotiable necessity of disconnecting yourself from the familiar life that you have, or minimizing your role in your familiar life and moving away to create a certain way of life that will serve the purpose of self knowledge. Why? Because the current busy life that you have was a result of you looking for something else, not for self. I created all this life around me: family, wealth, social bondings, the various associations. All this I have created for the sake of dharma, artha, kama, for the sake of pursuing virtues and other values of life, for pursuing security and belongingness and all that, and for the pursuit of acquiring various comforts and pleasures. So my whole life until now was designed by a different purpose. Now I am going for a qualitatively completely another purpose, for which this life is not designed for that. So once my main purpose in life has changed, why should I hold on to something that doesn't serve me anymore? So what do? I bring it down to the barest minimal, what I consider as my duty. So there is a process. So leaving the home and going away is a process. For some, it can happen in a moment. Turanam means immediately give up. Immediately give up can be both physical and has to be cognitive. Definitely, it is cognitive. It could be physical, or it need not be physical in some cases, or in some cases, it could be a progress over a period of time and slowly get rid of things that I don't need. I have too many shoes. I don't need so many shoes. Bring it to the minimum. Too much of jewelry. I don't need so much jewelry. Bring it to the minimum. I don't start acquiring things more and more. I don't start developing, I don't start feeding my identity that is dependent on people's opinions and situations. I don't seek for an identity that is defined by the world out there. I don't look for myself in the roles that I play in my office, the roles that I play in my family, the roles that I play in my social contracts and social interactions. Right? I don't look for myself definition in any family, society, or professional setting. Family, social, or professional setting, I don't look for myself there. I don't look for validation from anybody there. Now, having completely given up that tendency, I can see what are my obligations now. I might have given some promises to somebody. It's a basic value, right? So there is a more extreme form of giving up. I will come to that. But common sense says that I don't look for myself in any of this context anymore. So I am not going to invest in worldly life for the sake of happiness or for the sake of any future attainments anymore. Having said that, I feel that I have certain obligations. I feel if I don't do that, I feel guilty, or my things might feel inadequate. I will not feel wholesome inside me. It creates disharmony. For example, let us say you are living with some aged parents, or you have a dependent wife, or you have some children who are dependent on you. You just can't just dump them and go. That's not right. Shastra actually prohibits that. Shastra says you should take permission from your wife. If you have an aged mother, or if you're not married, you should take permission from mother. Like that, you have some things. If you are the only child, you cannot take renunciation unless your mother gives you permission. Like this, the various clauses are there into it. Okay. So basically, it all boils down to: is there something that I am obligated to? I have to check that. I am not looking for anything in this world, but is there something, some debts to pay? Is there some accounts? Are there some accounts to clear? Then you focus only on that. So your involvement with your current world situation, your circle, family, social, professional circle, is only to the extent of clearing your account. And having done that, you develop your new circle of those who are devoted to self knowledge. A community that devotes to self knowledge. It might look like, leave your home and go join a cult. It doesn't mean that. Leave your home and join a cult. It's a way. It sounds like that, but it's not. It's not that. Not in the way, at least not in the way that it is being portrayed nowadays. But basically, you develop you join a satsanga. You become part of a satsanga. You become part of a social group that is devoted to discovery of the truth, that is devoted to the study about Sat Vishaya, about Brahman. Those who are interested in that, who believe in that, who interested in that, who believe in this purpose, and who are striving for moksha themselves. So you have a company of like-minded people which will give you the necessary boost to continue on this path of self-knowledge. Right? Sangaha satsu vidhiyatam. Now in this process, there is one version, a drastic version. They say the moment you become detached, right at that moment you become a mendicant. The, the moment you have vairagya, right there you leave and go away. Don't worry about all these commitments and other things, because all this is a dream. When you wake up from dream, do you care how the dream is? Do you even bother? You woke up from the dream. In the dream, let us say you are you are about to uh, offer food for some hungry person in the dream. Okay? In a dream, you're about to offer food for a hungry person, and then you hear some calling bell, and then you wake up. Suddenly the whole situation is different. There is no hungry person, there is no food. You are in your bed sleep, you just awake. Now would you want to go back into the dream to feed that hungry person? You realize that whole setup is false, right? So the moment you realize the pointlessness of this, it's called Tivra Vairagya, like Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi had. In such rare cases, it is all right even if you just dump everything and go, because there is no obligation. There is no obligation to the world, because the world doesn't exist. This world is an illusion. So it is for those who are convinced that completely at the core level. If you're completely convinced about that truth, then for those people who are called Tivra Vairagis, who are the rarest of the rarest of the rare aspirants of truth, for them, like Ramana Maharshi level quality, for them, instant renunciation, which is physical and going away, is considered all right to do. Other than that, for everybody else, it is a gradual process of detachment. It is a gradual process of physical detachment that falls in line with the psychological detachment. Basically, you don't live a double life. You don't live an inner life and an outer life that is not in harmony with the inner life. You gradually try to match your outer life to the quality of your inner life, or the quality of the inner life that you seek. So let us put it like that. Okay. So Nijagrihat Turanam Vinirgamyata means commit yourself to the process of transition from the way of life that does not serve you, your spiritual goal, the way of life that does not serve the goal of spiritual liberation, which is in the form of self knowledge, that does not help your pursuit of self knowledge. The process of transition from that life, giving up that life, into forming into a way of life, committing to a way of life that serves this purpose of self realization. This is in short. Now I have given a very broad perspective on this. We have to interpret it according to the place, time, and the person involved, and it has to be interpreted on a case by case basis. There is no blanket rule, but there are some governing principles to this process. When you are going to commit to the transition process from the life that does not serve your spiritual goal into the committing to the life that serves your spiritual goal and nourishes your spiritual pursuit, in this transition process, one has to use common sense, also along with the guidance of the scriptures and the advice of the teacher, and facilitate it in a way that does not create too much disharmony. I am very carefully using this word because in our times, with all practical things taken into consideration, a certain amount of disharmony cannot be avoided in most cases. So that's okay. But not too much disharmony so that all your time goes in handling the disharmony. That is what we need to take care. The problem of disharmony is because if I create some discord with some people, very deep seated problems with some social groups or with some people or with some relatives, that disturbance will pursue you. It will come behind you wherever you go. It will come and disturb you, will not allow you to practice, will not allow you to study, and then you might have some guilt, some sense of omission and commission in your heart. A restless heart does not let you be in peace even when you are alone, right? So this transition process must be done with a very clear heart, at the end of which you don't have any guilt, you don't have any self blame, etc. And you have not created too much of bitterness to the people who are connected to you from the previous world, from your previous worldly life. Too much of bitterness. Sometimes there are some people who thrive on bitterness. There are people who will create bitterness out of every situation because their whole meaning comes from creating bitterness. There are people like that. They derive meaning from pain and suffering. So we are not talking about, we are talking about healthy, normal people who don't get too much bitterness because of your transition. So you have to manage the transition in a way you create minimal bitterness in keeping with the principle of ahimsa, minimum bitterness, and which cannot be avoided definitely, but minimal bitterness, and as smooth as possible a transition into your new spiritual way of life. It is absolutely necessary because if one does not create the satsanga, these two go together. Facilitating the transition goes along with seeking the company of those who are devoted to spiritual liberation and those who believe in or understand the truth in the light of understanding of the truth. Right? So it is not just any spiritual group, it is not any satsanga, but it is an informed satsanga where there is the knowledge of Sadvastu, which is Brahman. In the spiritual group that you see, there must be this Vedantic knowledge available. If the Vedanta knowledge is not available there, then that group is useless. Then it is just a cult around a personality. So sangas satsu vidhiyatam. Seek the company of those who are devoted to the truth. Why it is not join a cult? Because a cult is usually around a person. Satsanga is usually not too much around a person. There may be an inspiring personality, like the main guru, the acharya, or whatever. But the pursuit there is not defined by that person. Always being near that guru, always being, what we call as being that guru's donkey. That guru or the master or the baba or whatever the person is, your whole purpose is to be near that person and be devoted to that person. So the whole spirituality is defined and centered around this figure, this cult, the leader, center of the cult, that leader figure. That one could be calling himself or herself as an avatar, could be calling himself or herself as a Siddha Purusha or the perfected master, or could be as a self-realized master. There are people who put title for themselves as the true teacher, the true master. Sadguru is a title that is given generally as a respectful title to acharyas. There are people who put it like a title by themselves, and then you go behind the person. Then the whole cult is around that person, around that person's personality, and you're trying to get a glimpse of that person's. It's called donkey. The importance is more on the guru figure rather than on the teaching. So wherever the guru figure is more important than the teaching, that place is dangerous and better to avoid it. At least not to hang on there for too long. If you ended up somewhere like that, still gradually I would advise you to shift your focus to the teaching and give more importance to the teaching and less importance to the personality and move away, and then eventually take the next step, which we will discuss in the next class, which is Bhaktir Dridadhiyatam. Make your devotion to the God very steady and steadfast. What is this devotion to the God being made steady? Is basically Raja Yoga or cultivation of concentration. The mind is always seeking something or the other. So you gather all the energies of the various movements of the mind that goes behind various objects, and you make God as the only object that you seek through all the energies of your mind. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say, you should love God with the love of a miser for his money, the love of a paramour. Paramour means a secret lover. For a unchaste woman for her paramour. The beautiful example. An unchaste woman means a woman who is having her secret love. Which means it's a very subconscious thing. It's a very deep emotional thing. So for a woman, for her lover, for a miser, for her money, and for a dying man for his life, or something like that. He says all this love should uh, combine together in your love for God. So bhaktir dridadiyatam means your entire emotional energy is devoted to the pursuit of God as the only worthy object of adoration, which is yogic bhakti. It is not the Vedantic bhakti. It is the yogic bhakti, what is called Ishvara Pranidhana, which is supposed to give us the result of one pointedness or samadhi. Samadhi siddhir Ishvara Pranidhanat. There is a Yoga Sutra. So we will inquire more into that in the next class. So before we conclude today's class, I will address a couple of questions that are posted here. Namaste ji, I was having a doubt regarding choosing the material of clothes. We know that the most used alternatives to animal textiles are usually polyester and synthetic fabrics, which is not good for the body. What would be the most suitable choice for a yoga practitioner with ahimsa as the core principle? So we had a great yogi called Ramalinga Vallalar. Okay, so he says the best clothing for a yogic practitioner is cotton. That is his thing. But cotton may not be enough for a cold country. He was living in Tamil Nadu, it's a very warm place. So I would suggest a combination of cotton and wool based clothing. These are the least harmful. Of course, there are videos and of uh, wool farms where the sheep and what is that? There is one South American animal. So these, the cattle that gives wool, the animal that provides wool, there are farms which will treat the animal and butcher them after one or two cultivations. But then there are ethical farms where the animals are treated well. Just like buying eggs, there are people who eat eggs, those who care a lot for animal rights and all that. They pay a little bit extra money and then they buy what is called free range eggs, uh, where the hens are not kept in cages. They're allowed to roam free. They are fed a variety of food, not just corn. And then and even one more step, the eggs that do not hatch, they don't sit on all the eggs. There are some eggs that they don't hatch, so they take those eggs and then they sell like that. There are various levels of implementation with the least disturbance or the least cruelty to the animal. So we can manage that with wool to some extent. Probably there are some certified farms nowadays where the wool is sourced in a way that is devoid of cruelty to the sheep. So that kind of wool we can use. So natural fabrics, definitely natural fabric is best, and synthetic fabric is not okay. I read about tomato leather. I don't know how effective it is. I have not tested it myself. Maybe some enthusiasts here can explore it and share the information with the group here. There is a kind of a fake leather that is made from tomato peels. I don't know what it's called, tomato leather. I saw an advertisement for that, but I don't know practically how effective or enduring it is, or what its effects on the body, or is it really natural, or it is just tomato is just an excuse and it goes through a lot of other chemical processes and it has certain residual chemicals. I don't know about that. It requires a lot of research. And there is this fiber called hemp fiber, that has a lot of promise, but I have not explored it personally. I have not worn any hemp clothes to see how it affects the prana, and I have not read about it in the Shastra. In Shastra is always wool, silk, cotton, and leather, animal hide. This is what is there in the Shastra. But the animal hide and any other leather or animal hide in the olden times is a different story. Now is a different story. There is also a way of making clothes from bark. They say that Lord Rama, when he left for the forest, he wore a certain kind of a bark from a tree as a clothing. It is supposed to protect you from cold and all that. But practically, we cannot wear all those things nowadays, right? So, what the scripture says is not relevant beyond a point anymore. Practically, cotton works, wool works, and if you are able to source some animal hide or leather in an in the most ethical way possible, then that is okay. Where you are not cultivating the animal for the leather, it's either a naturally dead aged cattle where the leather is not going to be of great quality, or the cattle and other the animals that are raised for meat industry. If not industrial, at least they say that there is the free range meat, grass fed cows and all that. So from that kind of industry, the byproduct leather, if there is a history of sourcing the leather in that way, probably that leather is okay. If you cannot avoid leather, you can try to go for that. So basically, the point of dharma is, ahimsa is the dharma. Ahimsa paramo dharma. It is a dharma. The point of ahimsa is I try to follow as much as I can without losing my common sense practicality. And it is very important to understand I am following ahimsa for my own sake. I was looking at my own mind when this question of leather came. I was looking at my own mind. When I see a leather belt or a leather bag, or a leather shoe or a leather slipper, it feels on the skin, and when you touch it, it feels absolutely fantastic. There is no comparison. Not a single synthetic fabric comes even close, remotely close to the comfort that leather offers. So the mind, when I look for alternative, when I think about it, leather, ahimsa, if I am used to the comfort of leather, it is more likely that I am going to find more and more logic to justify leather. So, as a lover of leather products, using leather products, my mind is not likely to find the objectivity, is less likely to be objective about finding the options, right? I am not going to feel that great. So ahimsa becomes a pursuit for me to look at my own internal preferences. So the whole point of my practicing ahimsa is to help me rise above my raga dvesha, my likes and dislikes, and have an objective standard that will guide my pursuit of the choice of the right fabric and the right material for my clothing and accessories. So that would be the spirit. So when I use ahimsa, when I go for ahimsa, I am going for the main purpose of making decisions that are not governed by my likes and dislikes, but they are governed by some objective knowledge that is outside the domain of my likes and dislikes. So follow this this broad principle and try to apply as much as you can these two guidelines: objective knowledge that is above or outside the domain of my likes and dislikes, and taking effort as a tapasya, taking the pains to follow as much as I can. So that would be the general guiding principle. Now, sometimes I find the company of spiritual people within quotes much more complicated and tiring than the company of people who are more mundane and simple. Absolutely true. Since sometimes they channel their traumas in these spiritual circles. You're right. I never saw advantage in joining people devoted to spirituality. What do you think about it? I completely agree with you. And this requires a little bit more of discussion, and the time is up. So I will take up this point that you have mentioned in the next class, and I will begin Sangha Satsu Vidhiyatam Bhagavato Bhaktradida Diyatam. Then the next line Shantyadih Parichiyatam, all that. So I will put it in context and discuss, and let us examine the challenges, practical challenges in associating with a spiritual group, and then how to, what kind of filters that we need, and what kind of guiding principles that we should follow. We will discuss it in the next class. Okay, it's a wonderful question that you put here, because usually ashrams are the headquarters for all the nuts in the society. That's my own experience also. So, so let us explore it in a more as objective manner as possible, without our personal trauma with the spiritual people coming in the way of our deciding to join a spiritual group. Yeah. So we'll see what we can do about it in the next class. So with that, I will conclude this session. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tatsat. Thank you.